Commissioner Alvin Cheeks. Okay, so you can do yours, I'll do mine.
Okay, cool. Let me get that back. I'm sitting here with a movie producer from California. I'm going to switch over to him. I'm not important. I'm doing this, brother, because I want my sons them to see it and to inspire other young people to get off in the film and all that stuff.
Okay.
And I thank you for interviewing me.
Sure. So let me just start out by saying, can you just tell me your first name and your last name?
Alvin Cheeks.
Okay. So Alvin, can you tell me what street you grew up on in Hammond?
I grew up at 832 Merrill Street, Hammond, Indiana.
Okay. So specifically your mother and father.
My father was Albert Cheeks and my mother was Hazel Lee Cheeks.
Okay. And so did they grow up on, you said Ames Street?
No, Merrill Street.
Merrill Street.
No, my father was from East Chicago. My mother was from Columbia, Mississippi.
Okay. So tell me, Columbia, Mississippi, how did they first get together?
My mother was a school teacher, and she was standing at a bus stop in East Chicago, and every day she used to take the bus to go to Chicago and teach. And my father just one day started talking to her, and they ended up marrying. And the mayor of East Chicago at that time, which was Mayor Patrick, asked my mother why was she standing at the bus stop so early in the morning. He put her in his vehicle, and he took her to a school, and she ended up teaching there for 40 years.
Oh, okay.
So she ended up being a Chicago resident. And my parents, in 1969, they moved to Hammond on Merrill Street.
Okay. And what brought them to Hammond?
My father, he was working for Blow-Mox, and he was still working. In those days, they used to gamble. And my father won the house gambling with a gentleman, so he won the house in a poker game.
Oh, that's interesting. That's actually a cool story.
Yeah.
So your dad won a house in Hammond,
right,
in a poker game.
Ended up being the house that we had for 52 years.
For 52 years?
Yes, sir.
Okay, excellent. Okay, and so in that house, obviously they had you. Did you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I had 4 sisters, and I'm the only boy.
Okay, can you tell me the names of your sisters?
Dorsey Cheeks, Capucine Cheeks, Jacqueline, and Sharon Cheeks.
Okay. All right. Now I'm going to ask you to jar your memory a little. Can you tell me when you grew, what year was this? In '69, I think you said.
1969 when my parents acquired that.
Okay. So when you were born,
1964. I was born in 1964.
Oh, you were born in 1964. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when you were growing up, along that time, can you remember your neighbors to your right?
Oh, without a doubt. I can remember all my neighbors.
Okay, can you tell me a little bit?
Next door to me was George Young Sr. On the other side was Frank and Martha Diggs. And the next house was the Youngs. The next house after that was Imogene Hicks. The next house after that was Mr. Williams.
Okay.
I'm losing one people. The other direction was the Minifields. On the other side of the street was the Flowers. Mother Jackson, she lived across the street. Then it was the Lindsays. Then it was the Bushwars. Then next door to that, it was Pedro Rodriguez. And next door to that, I don't remember that particular family. Other side of that was the Williams family. Other side of that was another Rodriguez family.
Okay.
The Barkeys lived in the corner house.
Okay. So along that time, was it predominantly a black street or was it mixed? You said
no, it was a white street.
It was a white street.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So how many blacks were on your street?
It was 4 black families.
4 black families
when we first got there.
Okay.
And everybody else was either Hispanic or white.
Okay, Hispanic or white. And
the side of the park I lived on was predominantly white back in the old days.
Okay, back in the day. And were those white? Were they predominantly Polish or what?
Exactly.
With Polish.
Polish. Because I eat a lot of Polish food still to this day.
Okay. So now at the time, was your father still in the steel industry when he moved?
Yes, my father was in the steel industry. He started out with combustion engineer, then blow knots, inland steel for a little bit, and then he went to Union Tank. My father, he had a unique job. He could weld underwater, and he could weld up under cargo tanks, and there was very few people that could weld upside down at that time. And he used to train people how to weld. He was a boilermaker.
Okay. So he came from Mississippi?
No, my father came from Alabama. My mother was from Mississippi. My father was from Alabama.
Okay. So you need a pause?
No, go right ahead.
Okay.
This brother came.
Okay.
Brother.
So so Alabama and Mississippi originally, your parents?
Originally, yes.
So did they come north during the industrialization period for jobs? Why did they come here?
My father came here with his mother. Her name was Maggie Harris at that time, and my father was 14. And my mother, she came here for a better life. Everybody in my kind of interested in the old days. My mother had a college degree, so you can imagine. Her brother had a college degree. Everybody graduated from Alcorn State University in my family back in the old days.
Okay. And
my grandfather, J.W. Hendricks, he was a blacksmith. So he shoed all the horses and done all those kind of things. And they sold pecans, they sold cattle, they sold pigs and fish and those kind of things.
Oh, excellent. And so, to find a better life, to come here a better life, did he have his welding experience in back in Alabama, or did he get it here?
No, he got it here. My father only had a 4th grade education. My mom had a doctorate, which is really interesting.
Okay. And that's actually opposites attract. So he had a 4th grade education, and your mom had a doctorate.
Yes, sir.
And then they got together.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's excellent.
And my mother was a scientist, and she was a my mother she used to call herself an English major, but when I researched my mom, she was more of a science teacher. In those days, they didn't have a lot of science teachers of any race. So that's why it was very easy for her to get a job, because she got her master's from IU and Gary, and at that time you couldn't find anybody who had their master's in science. So it wasn't hard for her to get a job because they couldn't find science teachers. So they didn't want to discriminate, because she always joked about it, that she would always turn down jobs in the affluent white communities because she wanted to work in the inner city. So she would always talk about, her experiences, and that kind of thing.
So when she moved to Hammond, did she continue to teach in East Chicago?
Right. She always continued to work in East Chicago.
Okay, so she never really worked in Hammond?
No, sir. No, she didn't work in Hammond.
Okay. So, so now we got a family here, and it's 1969. During a kind of a time where black people are moving here and people are finding themselves and this, that, and the other. So, do you remember the air at the time? Was it all inclusive? Was it?
I can remember I went to Maywood School, which was down the street.
Okay.
At that time, Merrill Street used to go the other direction. The direction is going now. In those days, the street went the opposite way, and Maywood School was at the end. And the reason why I remember it, because my father, he worked midnights, and my mother was a school teacher, so she took me down there. At that time, the Berbers lived on Ames Street, and me and Anthony Berber were in the same kindergarten class, and one of his sisters, one of the twins, they helped me. At that time, he said, "Hey, your name on the wall." She's like, "Oh, you stay with him." So I spent most of my life going to their house in the morning and then going to Maywood. So yeah, I remember when Ann Hicks had all the problems and all of those kind of things.
Okay, and I knew the April Berber really well.
Right, April and all
Arnett and the whole.
Right. So I spent a lot of time around them when I was young.
Okay, cool. And so at that time, do you know if the racial harmony was cool, or did you have any issues?
You talking about when I was a young guy?
Yeah, during that time.
Yeah, I could remember. Man, at that time, I used to do stage and lighting at Maywood. They used to teach a stage and lighting class. It wasn't a lot of black students there. They taught us a little bit of lighting. Then they built Eggers, and I got into stage lighting, and I got into photography. Monty Totsi, I remember, and I still talk about that, and I still have the camera that she helped pay for, and she lived on a fixed income, and she gave me a book. Just recently, I gave the book back to her. But she bought my first photography book, and that's what I did. And later it became handy because my older sister, Dorsey, she's in the music business, so all the skills that I learned, I was able to apply them to help her out with her music business.
Okay, cool. So in that entire environment at the time, because there's only 4 black families on your street or whatever,
right.
Everybody kind of joined together. It wasn't any issue.
We ate at everybody's house, and in those days we didn't lock our doors. Like Mrs. Diggs, her name was Martha Diggs. She always cooked rice, so my mother never cooked rice. So as a kid, I ate a lot of rice. Pedro Rodriguez, he cooked a lot of squirrels, so I ate a lot of squirrels. Randall Banks, we used, still to this day, people tease that we ate monkey, we ate all kind of things,
right?
Because he made enough for everybody to eat. He used to tease me. He used to call me Home Improvement. And I used to joke, and I never really understood. But when I got older, that just meant that he taught us skills that we could do all kind of stuff. And we used to go to Maywood baseball at that time. Used to be over here where the Lear Company is. So I remember those.
So the Little League, you were in Little League.
Maybe I was in Little League.
Okay.
Joe Laurent was my coach.
Okay.
And
so there was the Elves, the Demons. What were you?
I was on the Saints.
The Saints.
Joe Laurent was my coach, and
was that red? The color of red?
You exactly right.
Yes.
And we used to have some of the best rivals at the field and off the field, and that's where me and Gerard McClendon, became friends, and both of us became photographers. And I done a stint at Columbia College, and I learned all about photography, and I got a chance to work at the Defender with Brian Jackson. Had opportunity to study under Al Wesson. Al Wesson was Peter LeGrand's understudy, and Peter LeGrand's trained me in black and white photography. Okay. We used to go by the McClendons, and he used to loan us, at that time, we couldn't afford camera lenses, so we all had Nikons. So we used to all interchange lenses, because the lenses, they interchange. So Mr. McClendon, he had a great effect on me in my photography.
So, ironically, the theme of this entire project that we're putting together is It Takes a Village. And you may not have known what you're doing, but you just gave me the epitome of it takes a village to raise a child.
Right.
By just saying you ate at all these squirrel over here, rice over here, photography, lenses, and everything.
Right.
So everybody to kind of raise you to the person that you are.
Without a doubt. And I've had the opportunity to be in the casino business. I can give you a little bit of history on that. In 1992, casino gambling didn't become legal until 1994. But in 1992, I met a guy. His name was Charlie Darling, and he owned a lot of property throughout Indiana. And I was a young guy, I didn't have a driver's license, but I used to drive him around. And he said, "We're gonna buy this. Casino gambling is gonna, become legal." And we bought a slag heap. I don't know if you remember, but it used to be a slag heap where the golf course is, where they used to have slag from Inland Steel.
Right.
And I knew about the property because my father was in the steel business, and it was like granite, trying to pound into it. I was like, it don't cost me anything, I'll sign my name. And it was a guy whose name was, how you doing, Miss Juju? It was a guy, his name was Clayton Potter. He recruited me. And he used to own 4 companies: Indiana's Last Real Estate, Indiana's Last Development Company, and I was his research guy. And I told him, I say, casino gambling is going to be legal and the bridge is going to go through your property. He said, "Oh, you get out of here, you crazy."
Right.
2 days later, he showed up at City Hall. He said, "Man," he said, "I go keys to your office, you're going to work for me, and you're going to..." I said, "Sir, I don't know you, I don't know, how do you know me and all of this?" Later, if you go through the archives at the library, you'll see where we own principal property, and we made $17 million off of my idea to partial off the properties to the city. We wouldn't sell it to them whole. We'd only sell them to them in increments. To go back a bit, I was brought into politics by Robert Pastrick. And at that time...
Robert Pastrick?
Robert Pastrick.
Okay.
And at that time, the mayor was Roskowski. And Roskowski was tied into big-time baseball with Maywood Little League. If you remember, the baseball field used to be the opposite direction. So I hit a ball, and it broke out Mr. Roskowski's window. He's like, wow, that's a great hit. He's like, can you guys play for my team? We was like, no, we already own the Saints. Oh, don't worry about that. I'll take care of that. So I knew Mayor Clinton because all of them at that time had a great involvement in baseball. Baseball was big time in the neighborhood, so they used to come and recruit the kids from the park. I'm like, I played for Joe Laurent. And my dad, him and Joe Laurent was friends, so I said, my dad is not going to let me play for anybody else. So to move it kind of forward, I spent a lot of time in East Chicago because that's where my mother worked and my father worked.
Right.
So on the weekends, I would go hang out with my older sister. My mother would be like, you gotta do this. I know I'm going to Chicago. So that's why I learned most of the things that I learned. And my senior year, I met a guy named Benny Stanley, which he's deceased now.
Benny Stan?
Benny Stanley.
Stanley.
He was a research guy. He said, little brother, you always in the library. Can you look this up for me? I was like, I gotta look it up. I got it right here. And I gave it to him. He said, you're my research guy. Because my mother, she never let me leave the library when I was young. So that's how I knew about the room you were talking about and all that. Mrs. Long, she was the person that created that room. And I took part in that when I was in high school. It was a white gentleman. His name was Jerry. Jerry was the AV director at Hammond High. And he taught me all about film and taught me how to work soundboards and how to take them apart and lighting. So I learned that at a young age. So after that, I went to the East Coast, and I worked for a gentleman that used to live next door to me, Mike Diggs. He was, at that time, he was president of Pacesetter Steel.
Pacesetter Steel?
Right.
Okay.
And we used to unload steel barges. It was kind of high risk.
Okay.
So nobody never wanted to work the job. So we done that, and then I went on to Levitt's Furniture. Worked all kind of jobs. So my father got sick in 1992. In 1992, remember, Church's Chicken used to be right across the street.
Right.
My father owned that property with a Jewish guy. And at that time, we had a place called A&W Amusement Center, which was an arcade. And I used to run the little arcade and stuff. And shortly after that, my father passed. Martha Howard, he took me to college. He was like your dad. He was a hunter, so he taught me how to hunt, and he taught me about guns and about protecting myself. And that's kind of where I got my basis from. Then I went to Columbia College, and I had the pleasure of having an instructor, Peter LeGrand, who was Ansel Adams' right-hand man. And from that, I met Al Weston. And hold on.
I'm gonna give you a hint in terms of shooting. If you shoot this way, when you put it on your television, the left side and the right side is cut off.
Right.
But if you shoot this way, it fills your whole screen.
Okay.
I mean, did it translate? Did it turn over? Yeah, it fills your whole screen. That's just a tip. Is that a Samsung?
No, this is a GTE.
Oh, okay.
Like everybody's calling me that the guys they usually play chess here, and I spend a lot of time.
Oh, okay. You gotta
playing chess.
You gotta answer it.
No.
Oh,
We're
okay.
gonna keep going. We're in the middle of a great interview.
Okay.
And,
So let me back up to. I'm trying to capture some of those earlier times too.
Yes, sir.
Do you remember Brooks House?
Without a doubt, we on Saturdays we used to do karate upstairs.
Okay.
Willem Maker, Hester Cannon. It was a white guy. I can't think of his name, but I know this. His name will come to me. But they were part of, kind of how we grew up. Everybody went to Brooks House when I was young. And we used to hang out in the library. We used to have a library downstairs. And
Ms. Durr was she the librarian at the time?
Yeah, Ms. Durr was the librarian at the time. and I can't remember, but I just Ms. Durr name's really stuck in my head because she became captain to the Democratic Party. You know, so I knew her very well.
Okay. Okay. So what are some of the other things besides the library that you remember at Brooks House that helped you grow into the person you are? What do they offer that helps you?
At Brooks House?
Yeah.
I mainly went there for the karate on Saturdays, and you know I was more into books and stuff. So I used to hang out in the library and stuff. That was kind of more.
That was you? Okay.
What I was kind of into back then.
Okay. So let me switch to in Oklahoma, 1921. They had a place called the Black Wall Street. It was actually Greenwood, Oklahoma.
That is correct.
And Hammond's version, even though it's very small, would be Conkey Street, because that's where everything was
correct.
as far as us.
The pool hall,
Yeah.
the fish thing, Mr. Collins store, Collins Variety Store. Wow, I can't remember all of them. Mr. Coach Green, he had the TV shop. You know, so I remember some of them.
Tell me a little bit about your recollection of Conkey Street. What did it mean
My
to you?
recollection was going to that candy store, Collins Variety Candy Store, and then it was across the street. It was the barber shop. You just go to the barber shop to the candy store, and you know, it was a beautiful thing where it had so many black businesses taking place at that time. So that was really good. You know that we seen black businesses. Now you don't see that and come see in the city of Hammond, you know, at this current time.
Right. And at one point I knew they were doing, I guess, the HUD redevelopment, and they got rid of
urban renewal.
Urban renewal got get rid of I think it was the 1100 block of Hammond. And
I got rid of the.
You know what? I gotta just pause it just for a second.
Okay.
I'm sorry.